Film is a disease, Frank Capra said. When it infects your bloodstream, it takes over as the number one hormone. It plays Iago to your psyche. As with heroin, the antidote to film is more film.
My name is Bond.
Bond.
Bond. Bond.
Bond.
Bond.
James Bond.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my Celluloid Heart podcast. In case you're new, once again, like always, that I've been doing, just to let you know, because, you can't assume everybody is, a frequent listener. So if you're new, normally I take two movies, I put them together with either an actor or a certain theme or a topic, and put them together, and I throw some facts in there, and I'll either do it by myself or I'll have somebody with me, and we'll do a little show. But this time, for the beginning of this year, going up until April, is I am leading through all the James Bond movies, as you see on the title, 007, You Only Live Twice, 1967. This is an epic James Bond movie. Epic meaning it feels like it's a very long movie. It takes place from China to Japan, like all over. Excuse me. So it's very good. I really like it. But it is, like I've said before, before we start the show, we're going to get into some other stuff. But some of those I kind of go, I got to watch You Only Live Twice. But I love it because it got Blofeld in it. Where you see Blofeld, and it's very cool. But then also you go, so it's Thunderball and that are that way for me. The other three are great. And then this one's like, but I still love it, no matter what. It's still Sean Connery, badass, 60s movie. So there's no corrections from the last show that I could tell. But if you have any movies you want me to do or talk about or any comments, and now I've put up a voicemail, set up a Google voicemail, so you can call 602-688-2403, and you can, let me know, hey, I want you to do, True Romance or Raiders of the Lost Ark, or, I already did Raiders with a friend of mine, but I can do Raiders on my show, or, whatever. I want you to do, fucking Star Wars, oh my God, hey, I haven't done Star Wars. Anyway, or you can write me an email if you don't like the phone, and I can play that on the air, the voicemail. Write me at mycelluloidheart@gmail.com. So that'll get you through there, and you look us up on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. So now I'm going to let you know what I've seen in the movies, at home, in the theater, wherever I watch movies. One was in my car. One was in a ballroom. So my wife the other day was like, hey, guess what? They have all the Beverly Hills Cop movies on Blu-ray. And she's like, it's a real good deal. And I'm like, okay, but, 3, it's one of those. Do I buy all 3 when the third one's not so good? It's like Smokey and the Bandit. 1 and 2 are great. 3 is not so good. So I go, okay. So she goes ahead and buys it. I said, that's cool, which is good, because it's one of those where, I've said this before on this show, where you want to buy a movie sometimes. You go, I should fucking own that movie. And then you either buy it and own it and you don't watch it because you've seen it so fucking much. Or that happened to me with The Getaway, but I watched it recently. Or that you just, it's a movie that's great, but you're like, I don't want to waste some money on buying it because I've seen it so much. So it's kind of my thing. And also now that I'm into like the digital codes, are like, I'm like, I just need to get, I just want everything digital so it's easier. But I do like the physical media where I can look on the shelf and see all my movies. So that's nice. Anyway, so Beverly Hills Cop from 1984. My wife, her and I had watched it, but she was like I said, you'll hear about my wife. She likes to sleep. So if it doesn't grab her attention or she wants to go to sleep and we're renting it or we can watch it wherever, she'll just be like, I'll catch it later. So we watched this. So she was like, I really like that. I go, yeah, it was good, right? It was, comedy. And of course I'm like, oh, watch this. That's a federal tax stamp. You can't go no cleaner than that. It's, and hey, didn't I meet you? No, that's not me. I'm from Buffalo or that guy, whatever. Anyway, hysterical stuff. So that's a great movie. Beverly Hills Cop, 1984. Saw that one. And then right after that, I said, you want to watch part 2 now? And she was like, yeah. And it was our day off and said, cool, okay. So Beverly Hills Cop 2 from 1987, directed by Tony Scott. This one has a special place in my heart because it was one of like the first videos that I bought. I bought that video. I had the soundtrack album, and I even drew. I wish I still had it. I drew like the album, and it was really good. I just did it freehand, but by looking at it and then drawing, and I thought it was really nice. And then one day I show some girl the picture, and my thing is, I'm in high school, and I'm like, look I drew this. Like, this took a lot of work, and I'm showing it to her. And I did like her and was hoping something would happen. And all of a sudden, she wrote on it in a pen, "Black is beautiful," across it in like red or blue pen. And I'm thinking, like, you just fucked up my shit. Like, it looked just like the album, and now you fucked that up. I did that with the Return of Bruno album as well, with Bruce Willis put out an album, and I had that one. Yeah, I'm old because I had albums. And then, so anyway, that one, special place in my heart. I love that Bob Seger song. I watch it now and I'm like, oof. But back then, I love that. Like all the action, all the cool stuff that Tony Scott style, whatever. Rest in peace, Tony Scott. Then on Criterion Collection, they have on the Criterion channel, they have these sci-fi, 70s sci-fi. And so I had watched that. I told you guys about God Told Me To, and that was pretty cool. And then they have Westworld on there from 1973, and they have some others. And I'm going to definitely watch those others. And I'll tell you what, in case you're going to make fun of me or you want to call in and make fun of me, I have never seen Logan's Run. So I'm going to be watching Logan's Run here soon, maybe on my days off. So I watched Westworld from 1973 with Richard Benjamin and Dick Van Patten. You'll know him from, Spaceballs. And Eight is Enough, of course. And it was a good little movie. I haven't watched this new TV show. My friend Joe lent it to me, the first season on Blu-ray, and I haven't watched it yet. But it was really cool. It was really, like, I could get why I think they made a future world after that and all that. But anyways, Michael Crichton directed, and it was a fun little thing. It was pretty neat. And then I saw Killer's Kiss, which was a Stanley Kubrick film from 1955. And it was really cool. It was like film noir, but it was also just a little like just low-key drama. It was like really neat. I really liked it. The visuals were awesome. It was just great. And then again, like I said, when the wife buys these things, she finds these deals, and she was like, "Hey, I bought Good Boys," and I'm like, "Oh, I'll open it. I'll go, oh, it's a Blu-ray," and I open it, and I go, "Oh, you bought Good Boys?" And she's like, "Yeah, it was funny," and I go, "Well, it was, but I don't know if I would have ran out and bought it." And she's like, "It was like, $15 or whatever. It was cheap." I'm like, "Okay." So anyway, watch. It was good. If you haven't seen it, it's good. I liked it. Then I went to the theater and I saw The Gentleman from 2020. And, that was, the Guy Ritchie. And it's got, Matthew McConaughey and Hugh Grant and Charlie Hunnam. And it's back to what he did before. It's not as good as Snatch, of course. I would say I like Rock'n'Rolla, and I'm waiting for him to do a sequel to Rock'n'Rolla, because at the end of Rock'n'Rolla, it said so-and-so will be back in the real Rock'n'Rolla. And I was like, oh shit, that's going to be awesome. So I liked Rock'n'Rolla because it had that snatch type thing of like this was intertwined with that. They kind of did that with this too, and it was really good. And Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, of course, did that. Anyway, Gentleman's good. It goes with all three of those other movies. So it's pretty cool. So anyway, so that's what I saw. Oh, and then, of course, because I was going to do that Goldeneye episode that I told you guys about that I was going to record with Matt Rich. And then things got away from me. I was dealing with stuff over here at this apartment. Stupid apartment was giving a shit. So it was and our AC was like leaking water or whatever. So I was like, okay, forget it. So I said, I can't do it right now. But I said, I better watch Goldeneye and make all my notes. And I think I've noticed if I really like a movie, I did that with this one. I take these notes because I walk you through the movie. But with Goldeneye, I think my notes are extremely long because I really love Goldeneye. It was just, when I went and saw that, like, I'll get to it when we talk about Goldeneye, why that's so special. But it's just funny that, that Matt Rich is like, yeah, I'll pick on that movie. I'm like, bring it on, tampon. So anyway, let's get to the topic of this show, which is You Only Live Twice from 1967. So, actually, before I get to that, let me tell you a little bit. I told you guys how I'm doing brackets. So I thought maybe I'd give you a little insight so I don't have to read through all the brackets. I'll read to you what I got so far. And then, of course, I'm going to add best villain and stuff like that in here. Dr. No. The song was the James Bond theme. That was good. The moment was when he killed Professor Dent. That was pretty cool when he said, you've had your 6. Pre-credit scene, there wasn't one. And the gadget, there wasn't one. And then From Russia with Love, the song was From Russia with Love. The moment that I liked was blowing up the fuel barrels. That was cool with the flare gun. Pre-credit sequence was the fake Bond being killed by Quint. By Red Grant, and the gadget was the briefcase, and that was pretty badass. And then Goldfinger had Goldfinger the song. Killing Blofeld is what Odd Job is what I put as a moment, and the pre-credit was a wetsuit where he takes off the wetsuit and he's got a tuxedo underneath, and that was okay. I'm just kidding, that was badass. And the gadget was a DP5. Thunderball was the song Thunderball, and I really liked, like I said, that Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. The moment was probably the spear gun when he's laying there and that she's like, that guy's coming up behind you. Boom! Shoots him with the spear gun. I think he got the point. Pre-credit was the fighting with the widow, and then the jetpack. Like, that jetpack was badass. And then the gadget was a Geiger counter watch. I feel was probably the best gadget in that movie. There were other gadgets and there were other moments, but these are the moments that I pick. You Only Live Twice. I'm not going to read because I got my notes here to read. So let's get to some music first.
You only live twice, or so it seems. One life for yourself and one for your dreams. You drift through the
All right, so that is a really good song. I mean, it's the better. I think I like it better than Thunderball. I don't know what it is. It's either Tom Jones or Thunderball that I just I don't know. But anyway, we'll get to that when we get to the winner of the Sean Connery bracket. Anyway, You Only Live Twice from 1967. The plot is an agent, 007, in the Japanese Secret Service Ninja Force. That's right, you heard me right. Must find and stop the true culprit of a series of spacejackings before nuclear war is provoked. Stars Sean Connery as James Bond, Akiko Wakabayashi as Aki, Tetsuro Tanba as Tiger Tanaka. He's really cool, Tanaka. Toru Shimada as Mr. Osato, and he's number 1. Anyway, Karen Dorr as Helga Brandt. Donald Pleasance as Blofeld. Fucking bad. Donald Pleasance, not to get off on something, but if you watch Halloween, there's more going on. Donald Pleasance is bringing his fucking all. He's got all kinds of crazy coolness going on. Anyway, on the first Halloween. I don't remember his really acting in the other ones, but I definitely want to buy all those and watch them again. Anyway, Charles Gray as Henderson. Charles Gray is funny because he was in, the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and he is in this movie playing a good guy, Henderson, and Bond's like liaison in Japan. And then he's in Diamonds Are Forever, and he's playing somebody else, spoiler alert, Blofeld, and it's like, come on. It's just like, I just watched Goldeneye. I talked about Goldeneye. Goldeneye has Joe Don Baker in it, and Joe Don Baker was also in Living Daylights, and so he's a bad guy in Living Daylights, and then he's a good guy, so it's cool that they, kind of do that, but kind of not. Anyway, Bernard Lee is M, Lois Maxwell is Miss Moneypenny, and Desmond Llewellyn is Q, like always. Fucking badass. And this was written by, are you ready, Joe Merle? Roald Dahl wrote the screenplay, and Ian Fleming wrote the novel. So Roald Dahl went from the novel, blah, 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 blah. And he said he just went by the formula. He's like, I'm not really good at writing these kind of things, but I'll just go by this formula, and he did. And it was directed by Louis Gilbert, who has directed other things. Unfortunately, I do not remember what they were. So, anyway, here we go. So, sorry. The novel of You Only Live Twice was the last Ian Fleming James Bond novel published during his lifetime. So, when he was still alive. Released on March 16th, 1964, it was the 12th novel in the series for the first time in the James Bond film series, although the movie bore little resemblance to the source novel. Excuse me. Also, the title of You Only Live Twice comes from a haiku or poem included in the Ian Fleming novel on which the film is based, and it goes like this. It's pretty cool. You only live twice, once when you were born and once when you look death in the face. In the novel, the poem is written by James Bond for his friend Tiger Tanaka. So that's pretty cool. And like I said, I've read three of the books. So I'm definitely going to, start reading more. I know that this would have maybe been a better podcast had I read the books and been like, here's what was different. But also it would have been longer. So we'll get to that later. Anyway, it starts with the gun barrel. And then we see a United States capsule like orbiting around the Earth. And Hawaii notices that an unidentified object is approaching them. Like they're NASA, kind of like on the right stuff. They have the guy in Australia, Dennis Quaid's in Australia. Anyway, they notice that they don't see it, but then they do then they do, and communications are jammed and breaking up. So the guys in the capsule are like, no, we don't see anything. And they're like, oh, there it is. And then the ground is like, hello, can you hear us? And everything got jammed. And then the other spaceship opens, almost like a flower, but it's a capsule, the other spaceship. And it opens up and it engulfs the other capsule, like basically eats it. And then it closes, and the man that was floating outside, like doing a routine mission, when that thing closes, it cuts his line, and he just floats off into space. And it's like, holy shit, that would suck. Like, just no air, like you're just, boom, that's it, Anyway, then we see a UN-type meeting about what this could be. They notice that it landed in Japan, and the British man says that their man in Hong Kong is working on it right now. We now see Bond in bed kissing a Chinese woman. And this is interesting. Sai Chin, who played Bond's playmate in the opening pre-credit sequence, returned to the Bond series nearly 40 years later when she played one of the players in Le Chiffre's big poker match in Casino Royale. So that's just cool that they brought her back. Like, they're like, hey, let's do a little, it's just fucking, that's awesome. I love it. Now I want to watch, when I get up to that, I'm doing that with Jason Bromley, and that'll be great. Bond says, here's another, problematic situation with Bond, but, it's the 60s, so come on, let him be as much of a fucking pig as he can be, I guess. Bond says, "Why do Chinese girls taste different than all other girls?" As she gets out of bed, she says, "You think we better, huh?" He says, "No, just different. Like Peking duck is different from Russian caviar." She says, "Darling, I give you very best duck." He says, "That would be lovely. We've had some interesting times together, Ling. I'll be sorry to go." She pushes a button, and the Murphy bed folds up into the wall with him still in it. And a man runs in, and two men run in with machine guns. So a man runs in, opens the door. Two other men run in behind him with machine guns, and they just unload into the Murphy bed, like with Bond in it. Then the police arrive. Then those guys just leave, and the girl leaves. Then the police arrive and enter the apartment and open the bed, and they check the bed, and and they check Bond, and they see that he's the blood all over, and one of the officers says, "We're too late." The other one says, "Well, at least he died on the job." The first one says, "He would have wanted it this way." Then this theme song and the credits. And again, these credits are cool. They're, that Maurice Bender doing these, opening titles that are like cool and just with the women. It just, there's something about the Bond credits. But they get better, I think. Okay, I'm going to be honest right now. I'm going to tell you. I'm really getting excited to get into Roger Moore. Now, I love Sean Connery, but Sean Connery was a late love of mine because me, like most people my age, grew up with Roger Moore. I was born in 1971. That was when Diamonds Are Forever came out. I was too young to see that movie. But when I was old enough, I grew up on movies from like 1981 or whatever was For Your Eyes Only. I saw Spy Who Loved Me, and Moonraker, and one of my, that I'll get to when I get to it, but Octopussy really holds a place in my heart again because of just seeing that for the first time, like all the I'll get to that later. But anyway, so I'm excited to get to Roger Moore. So this is almost like, oh, come on, let's just get to it. But also, it sucks because the last Sean Connery movie has got to be the worst. Like, Diamonds Are Forever is like, ugh. And there's a theory that the Bond films are almost, in a way, like the Star Trek movies. So it's like every other movie, 2, 4, 6 are good. 1, 3, and 5 are not. And they say that, like, with people are worried about this last Daniel Craig movie being horrible. My buddy Sean wants to do that podcast with me, like I said, because he's thinking that it's going to be horrible. And Die Another Day was horrible. It's horrible if I'm Bond to end on a movie. If I'm playing Bond, I end on a movie that nobody likes. Like, what the fuck? So, anyway. My point being, I'm excited to work up to get to Roger Moore. Very cool. And those credits in the Roger Moore movies, I really like. They get better as they go. Of course, Casino Royale was awesome, and Skyfall was really cool. We open on China. I believe it's in China. And a man is watching the Navy ship in the harbor with binoculars, and the paper in front of him says, "British Naval Commander murdered." So now you learn that James Bond is a commander. They might have called him Commander Bond before, but he's a commander. Now we are on the ship, and they are burying Bond at sea. They do the 21-gun salute and all. They dump his entombed body, so it's like wrapped in like a mummy. And they drop it into the water, and we see it float to the bottom. And two guys in scuba gear swim over and grab Bond's body and bring him to a submarine. They lower him down to the ground. They cut open the bag, and Bond is in his naval outfit and has a breathing device in his mouth. He is kind of asleep. He wakes up and asks, "Permission to come aboard, sir?" They then show him to where M is. He sees Moneypenny, and she tells him that he might want to go right in. So that's just it's just awesome because, first of all, if you're watching this movie for the first time, you're like, oh my God, Bond's dead? Like, no, that can't be. They bury him at sea. You're like, what the fuck? These guys come up in swimsuits. You're like, in scuba gear. You're like, are those bad guys? What's going on? And then all of a sudden, oh, no, they're not bad guys. They took him to the sub. They cut him open, and he's dressed in his fucking dress blues. And he just sits up, and he's like, oh, hey, guys, permission to come aboard? Okay. And he does, and they do that because it's a naval thing. You know, it's just really awesome. Then M tells him that hopefully all of his enemies now will believe that he is dead because then it will give him more elbow room. They then talk about how he will be going to Japan and find out what is going on. The U.S. will be launching another missile soon. He understands. M gives him a paper with info about the man that will be meeting him. Bond memorizes it and sets the paper on fire. So that's just a cool thing where he's just like, it's things that you see in the 70s, you used to see. Like now it's just like spy movies are different. And I was wondering this today watching Goldeneye, finishing Goldeneye. I wonder if spies have turned into movies of what they do now. They feel like it's like a movie, or if the movies have gotten it all wrong and real spies aren't doing all the shit that we all think that they're doing. You know, there's no code talk. There's no whatever, you know. Anyway, just struck me as funny. So he sets it on fire. Then he is sent away, and he stops to talk to Moneypenny, and they have a little back and forth again. Always great. Sean Connery and Moneypenny are so good. M calls on the intercom and says, Moneypenny, give him the code word we came up with for him to use with the SIS. She then looks at Bond and says, we tried to think of something that you wouldn't forget. It's, I love you. He kind of smirks. She says, repeat it to make sure you get it. He says, I get it, you know, because she wants him to say I love you to her. He says, I get it. As he is heading out, she says, good luck, and then throws him a small book. She says, instant Japanese, you may need it. He says, you forget, I took a first in Oriental language at Cambridge. He throws the book back to her. So that was just cool. Like, and I love you. Like, that's just funny. Like, they're fucking with him. Like, M knows that he'll hate that, and she knows that he'll hate that. So it's so great. Now he's putting on a wetsuit. They're putting him in the torpedo tube. They're still in the sub. They fire him out of it, and he swims to the surface, and he is now in Japan. And he's walking around the streets at night, and a woman sees him, and she opens her pocketbook and talks into it. Then another woman does the same as he walks by. Then he is told to go to a sumo match. Then a woman walks up and sits down next to him. They're watching the match. Bond turns to her and says, I love you. She says, I have a car nearby. He says, oh, where do you suggest we go? She says, I know a quiet hotel. He asks, and? She says, where your friend is waiting. He looks at her. She says, Mr. Henderson. He suspects something. So he asks, wasn't Mr. Henderson able to come himself? She says, I suppose not. Bond asks why. She says, he didn't say. He gives her this really good look, which is an I don't trust you fucking look. Like, ugh. After the match, he says, well, I guess it's about hotel time. So they leave. Now they are driving in her car, and Bond sees it is a little decked out like his. Like it's got things in the back seat, like knobs and things. He asks, how long have you worked for Henderson? She says, long enough to know not to discuss matters with a stranger, which is fucking, that's cool. Like right there, like, I think you can trust her. I think she's legit because somebody else would like try to lie and, you know, blah, blah, blah. He is then led to Mr. Henderson's room, and this is what I said about him playing, one of my facts is him playing Blofeld in Die Another Day. I mean, Diamonds Are Forever. But in 1967, he played in The Night of the Generals opposite Donald Pleasance, who plays Blofeld in this film. So isn't that weird? Like, they're both in a movie in 67. The other movie they're in, they're both in together. So that was cool. He pulls a gun on Henderson as he walks in. He then takes Henderson's cane and hits him hard in the leg. But it doesn't hurt because it really is Henderson. Henderson says that he has lived in Japan for a while and that Bond will be meeting with Tanaka. Henderson makes them both a drink. Henderson's hands Bond his drink and says, that was stirred, not shaken. That was right, wasn't it? Bond says, perfect. And what I read on some of these things, I guess some people think that they made a mistake and they just rolled with it. The whole thing is it's a joke, So I know you guys got that, but I just found that as funny as one of the things. Henderson tells him that he does believe that the missile is launched from Japan, but he doesn't know who or where. And what else was funny that I didn't write down, when he hits him in the leg, he says, "I'm glad you got the right leg," because he could have beat him in the wrong leg and been like, fuck, and then had his other leg fucked up. So that was cool. Says it, but he doesn't know who or where. He says that he suspects foreign power. As he is in the middle of talking to Bond, he stops talking. Bond jumps up to see if he is okay. Bond pulls him to him, and there's a knife sticking out of his back. So they're in this Japanese, little, apartment with the paper walls. And so when he pulls him to him, there's a hole in the wall, and there's, through the paper, the knife got stuck in him. And it's sticking out of his back. And whoever stabbed him right through the paper wall, Bond jumps through the wall and chases the assassin. So that's just kind of cool, just because I don't know if I'd think about jumping through a wall. I'd go around even though it's a paper wall. But there's another question. How much do those paper walls cost? Are they expensive or are they just cheap? Who knows? Anyway, Bond jumps through the wall, chases the assassin. Bond chases a man. The man pulls a switchblade. Bond dodges it and chokes the guy a bit. The guy's out. Bond sees, he probably chokes him more. He probably killed him. Bond sees down the hill that a getaway car is waiting for him. He then runs back to the man, takes the man's shoes off, the hat and the jacket. Then Bond, now in disguise and hiding his face, puts this mask over his face, over his nose and mouth. He limps to the car and gets into the back seat, and the driver drives away. And Bond is watching where he is being taken. And that was just cool because what Bond used to do, he used to get in disguise and he'd do detective work. He's kind of like Bond, like Batman a little bit. So that was pretty cool that he does this. So Bond's watching where he's being taken. He's being taken to Osato Chemicals building. Excuse me. And the fact is, the outside scenes at Osato Chemicals were taken at Hotel New Otani in Tokyo. So that was just kind of cool. It looks like a really cool hotel. Then Bond pretends to pass out from being hurt. The man carries him over his shoulder and takes him up the elevator. He lays Bond down and pulls the mask off. Bond says, "Hello there." Then they fight. And this is a pretty good fight. It's another cool set up. This guy's the office, Osato's office. And they're fighting all around and everything. It's pretty cool. Finally, Bond has to hit the guy with a small statue to knock him out, and it statue breaks. Then Bond has a drink, and he goes over to this little bar. He's looking for a safe, and he finds it. But where he opened the thing, there's a little bar in there, and he grabs some vodka to pour it into a glass, and then he looks at it and reads it, and he goes, "Siamese vodka." And so that was just funny. They make probably all kinds of vodka, but he's like, "Oh, Siamese vodka." Bond sees a safe and a reflection in the mirror. He uses a combination breaker machine to break in. He opens the safe, and the alarm starts going off. So that's cool because I thought he's got this code breaker thing to break into the fucking safe. So he's cool. He's good. No problem. And no alarm will go off, and he won't have to break into it. And as soon as he opens, that alarm starts going off, and you're like, and it's loud, and you're like, oh shit. And he tries to get out the door, but it is locked. The guards are coming, so he hides. Then the guards come in and run by him. He runs out the door into the elevator, but the guards see him and shoot at him. Then at ground level, another guard is shooting at him. He shoots back and kills that man. He's just brutal. Then the female from before arrives to pick him up. He still doesn't know if he should trust her. He tells her that he is going to take her somewhere so she can answer some questions. He tells her to pull over. She does. She then jumps out of the car and runs through a large doorway, and a rolling door closes behind her. Bond opens it and runs after her. It's like a rolling door, She then gets to the there's a subway looking area. She runs through this tunnel at the end of this little small hall. It's a little small hallway. Let's say 10 feet. So she runs through that. She's waiting on the other side of that. And he stops at the beginning of that little tunnel, that little hallway. And then he starts to approach her, and the floor is like a teeter-totter. And as soon as he steps on it, it drops down, and he slides down the chute, and he lands in this chair in a man's office. And he's just kind of like, blunk. Like, it would be a Bond move if he didn't mean to do it. That's how cool it was. He just slides right into the chair, and he's like, and he just kind of looks at the guy. And the man tells, and so now he's in this guy's office. The man tells him that he is Tanaka. Bond says, well, if you were Tanaka, how do you feel about me? Tanaka says, I love you. Bond says, well, we got that out of the way. Bond gives Tanaka the paper that he stole from the safe. They then get on Tanaka's underground private train. A woman gives Bond some sake. Then Tanaka says, would you rather have sake or a vodka martini? Bond says, I like sake. He takes a sip, especially when it's served at the right temperature, 98.4 degrees. Tanaka says, you are well cultured. And this is the stuff that make you almost like, I talked about those guys that dress like Bond, and they try to live the lifestyle. And sometimes you're like, come on, like, we don't all have money to just throw away income to be wearing fucking Tom Ford glasses and Tom Ford suits and all this stuff. But we could be a little more cultured. There's things that we could learn, you know, what kind of wine goes with meat, what kind of wine goes with fish, as you learned on From Russia with Love. It is not the red kind. So that goes with fish. And it's those kind of things, like 98.4 degrees, like let's make this sake a perfect temperature. Although I went to breakfast with my wife and one of her friends from work, another nurse, and she was saying that like her husband tries to be like, he knows stuff. He'll throw out all this knowledge, and it's almost annoying. And so that would be annoying if you were like, you like the sake, and he's like, oh, it's the perfect degree, it's 98.4. Like, you would be like, fuck off. So as Bond, it's cool. To be more cultured, that'd be cool. But also, are there other more important things than to try to be more cultured? And, you know, not everybody could talk. You know, you can't be like, oh, I'm cultured in the opera, and let me tell you about the opera, and everybody go, no, thank you. So anyway, pretty cool thing. I like that. Now someone, and that's where I said that stuff like that comes in later when Roger Moore and stuff, they'll ask him, what do you know about blah, blah, blah? And Bond will go, well, blah, 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 and he'll give him a whole fucking thing when he's just like, I just want to know if you knew about it. Now someone tells Tanaka that they have developed the photo that was with the stuff that Bond stole. So a fact here, I have a big giant facts. Forgive me with these Japanese names, but in order to gain some measure of authenticity for the team of stuntmen who would double as ninja in the climactic battle in the volcano, the producers enlisted the help of Japan's only practicing ninja master, 34-year-old Masaki Hatsumi, who had inherited the tradition from his then-retired teacher, Toshitsugu Takamatsu. Yeah. Both Takamatsu and Hatsumi had advised during the production of the first two of the Japanese Shinobi no Mono ninja assassin series of films produced in Japan between 62 and 66. So I'd like to find those. And not only did the film provide an opportunity for Hatsumi to give more credibility to the ninja characters, but also allowed him a few brief moments of screen time aboard Tiger Tanaka's private train as he interrupts Bond and Tanaka's sake discussion to announce that the photographs are ready for viewing. So when you're watching this movie, and here's what else I want to apologize. I'm sorry I keep jumping off, but here's something else. I think it's better because I'm not reading as much. But here's something that's interesting is that, no, I forgot. That when I started this, I said all the Bond films are available on Hulu, Netflix, and like Pluto TV, like all this stuff. So I'm like, no problem. I'll just do that. So then I do it, and I did that first one from 54. Then January 1st comes, and they pull all the Bond films from everywhere, from all free streaming services. Because, of course, the new one's coming out, and they want you to buy the other ones. And so it's like, well, fuck. Except they left the Pierce Brosnan ones. they're still on Netflix. So if you want to go see those on Netflix, then you can do that, because those are good. Die Another Day, not so much, but the other ones are good. Tomorrow Never Dies is my second least favorite Brosnan. So Tanaka and Bond look at it on a big screen. This picture is a picture of a boat on a coast, and there's a microdot on it, and it says that an American tourist took the picture and that she has been liquidated. They zoom in and read the name of the boat, and Tanaka has his men look it up. They then find diving girls. Plus, Bond asks if they can find out where the coast is. So that woman was just killed for taking that picture. So there's something that they're hiding there. Now we are at Tanaka's house. Two women come to give him a bath, while Tanaka also has two women giving him a bath. Tanaka says, rule number 1, here's another creepy fucking moment that you couldn't get away with today, unless it was a comedy. Rule number 1 is never do anything for yourself when someone else can do it for you. Rule number 2, that's a good rule probably. Although then you're a lazy piece of shit. And it's like, no, get the fuck up and get your own beer. Rule number 2 is that in Japan, men always come first. Women come second. Bond says that he may just retire here. Because, of course, sex. Bond and Tanaka are discussing the mission. Bond mentions Spectre. Tanaka says, now have you decided on a woman? Bond looks at one of the women and says, I'd just settle for this little lady right here. Tanaka says, good choice. She is very sexiful. It's like, wow. Then Bond is getting a massage by that woman. He is talking about how the last massage was in Hong Kong, but he had got interrupted, which was when he got killed. Then another woman comes in and takes over the massage. It is a woman named Aki that her and Bond have a history. Now this, for one, I was watching it, I'm taking notes, so maybe I'm not diving in, maybe I'm not catching all the stuff she said, but I knew that they had a history, and it seemed like a deeper history, because he was happy to see her, but I'm not sure exactly what the history was. But anyway, they have a history. So the other girl leaves, and she finishes rubbing him down. She says that no one will disturb them tonight, and that she will love serving under him. And, of course, there's another innuendo. Womp, womp. Now, here's a fact. This one is crazy. I think, I added this other part. So, it's another long fact, but this was interesting on the making of. The female leads, Mi Hama and Akiko Wakabayashi, both appeared in King Kong vs. Godzilla and What's Up, Tiger Lily. The latter was a James Bond movie imitation, which attracted them to the producers of genuine James Bond movies. A flaw was soon discovered. Neither actress knew any English. Wakabayashi was cast as Kissy and Hama as Aki, and both were tutored in English. Hama was having too much difficulty with English, so the two actresses swapped roles to give her the role of Kissy, which had fewer lines. Before they decided to keep her, Cubby had asked the director to tell her that it wasn't working out and that they couldn't use her. So he asked that guy that played Tanaka, he's like, the director's like, can you take her to dinner? Tell her it's not working out. The guy playing Tanaka's like, oh, fuck, really? All right. So then when he sees Tanaka again the next day, the actor that played Tanaka, the director says, so how'd it go? The actor played Tanaka said, tomorrow, my Hama commits suicide. The director then was like, because that's Japanese honor. The director then talked to Cubby, and they figured that they could work around it of her not knowing English. Like, they'd figure it out. And they did, and I think it works out fine. I understand that they want everybody to, like I said, everybody's dubbed in these movies where, like, they want it to a broad range of people. They want everybody to understand it. So, anyway, Bond is being brought to Osato building where he stole the papers from. He is then led into a room to meet Mr. Osato. Surveillance is watching him while he waits. A woman and a man land in a helicopter outside. So now he's playing like he's this businessman, and he's going back in there to see what he can find out. If he can maybe survey around the island and see what he can find. Mr. Osato, the helicopter lands outside. Mr. Osato and a woman who looks like she doesn't trust Bond She offers him a drink, and they seem to know that he likes Dom Perignon 59. Then Mr. Osato is sitting at his desk and talking to Bond. Bond doesn't know, but the man actually, this is pretty cool device. The man actually has an X-ray device in his desk and can see through Bond's like jacket and see that he has a shoulder holster on with a gun. He's carrying a gun. He tells Bond that he thinks that there may be something wrong with his chest. Bond ignores it. Bond is pretending to need licenses or permission for doing experiments. As Bond, Mr. Fisher, leaves, Osato asks the woman to kill him. So they know they think Bond's dead, these two. So they do believe in that, but they know that this guy's somebody. Sorry, I had to drink some water. So they know he's somebody, but he asks the woman to kill him. And as Bond is walking out of the building, a car is slowly following him. The man in the backseat of the car has a machine gun. As the car is getting closer, the female agent pulls up and tells Bond to get down. The man shoots at Bond. He jumps in the car and with her, and the chase is on. They are shooting at her and him. She calls for backup. Then we see a helicopter flying behind them. So it's pretty cool. She calls on the radio and says something, and you don't know what she says. And then this helicopter shows up above the car chasing them, and it's got a big magnet hanging from it. And it drops down, and it puts a magnet on the car, which picks up the car. It lifts it off the road, takes it out over the lake, and then just drops it into the lake. It's really cool shot too, because it's filmed from above the helicopter, and then that thing just drops. It's just really neat. Then Bond and Tanaka are talking on the radio. Bond says, "Can you reach out to M and ask him to send me little Nellie?" I repeat, little Nellie, and ask that she's accompanied by her father. So that's fucking, oh shit, what did he order? And he means Q. He's bringing fucking Q. Yes. And in fact, that scene with the magnet was the idea of Dana Broccoli, Albert Broccoli's wife. She was like, they were like, what do, they were kind of, sometimes they reverse engineer the stuff and figure out how are we going to get to this point? How do we have a chase? So they figured it out, and they were like, but what do we do? And she was like, couldn't you have a helicopter with a magnet? And they were like, oh my God, this is brilliant. So that was pretty cool. Bond is now at their building. A forklift tries to run him and her over. Him and the agent. He's back at, tries to run Some other men try and beat them up. Bond tells her to leave, and he continues to fight. Bond tries to escape by falling onto the boxes, and then he falls again. So he jumps on these boxes that are covered in a tarp, but it still looks cool. Like he jumps off the one, lands on the other, and lands on the other. But when he's on the roof, there's a cool thing of him running, and it's one long shot of him running and all these guys converging on him, and he's beating each one up. And it's all in one shot from far away. So it's pretty neat. And then he jumps off that onto the boxes and then jumps again. Then he gets up and walks off. So he's looking cool. After he jumps all the way down, gets away from them, then he just walks away. Fucking badass Bond move. Until a man hits him over the head with a wrench and knocks him out. So that's what else is kind of cool. He's like, I did it. I'm James Bond. And then gets hit over the head. Mr. Osato asks them to take Bond to number 11. So number 11 is the redhead. Mr. Osato, I forget because there's so many numbers in all these movies. I think it was number 1, but I'll get to that later. Maybe not number 1. I think Largo was number 1, right? Anyway, Bond wakes up on the red-haired woman's boat or room, and she was the one that was with Mr. Osato earlier. She says, wake him up. She then has all of her men leave. She says, I've got you now. Bond says, well, enjoy yourself. She slaps him real hard. She asks why he carries a gun and who he is. He still plays it off. She then grabs this very sharp tool and puts it in his chest pocket. And she starts kissing him. This is where this movie kind of gets weird. Just weird in this way. She's supposed to kill him, but I see where she's going when it leads up to where it's going. You'll see. But she's already asking who he is. He says, I have a confession. She starts kissing him. He says, I have a confession. I'm a spy. But then he says that he is a spy for a conglomerate type place, and he is working on monosodium glutamate. He says that they can have like $300,000. She then takes a blade out and cuts him loose. Then she hands it to him. He then cuts the straps off of her dress and says, "Oh, the things I do for England." Like, again, like, I mean, she was consensual. This one, at least, is consensual. Not like fucking, not like Pussy Galore, who's trying to fight him. Now she is flying a plane with him in it. So now he's in the back seat. He's telling her that she is going to need protection, and he has a guy in mind. She is looking at her makeup in a compact. So he's got this piece of wood. He's sitting in the back seat, got this piece of wood across, like he's got his arms in his lap, and this piece of wood is across his arms, so he can't lift them up, you know. And so he's telling her, sorry, and telling her that, you know, she's going to need protection. He has a guy in mind. She's looking at her makeup in the compact. So she's just like doing her makeup. She then drops it on the floor of the small plane, and it makes pink smoke. Then she pushes oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry that I gave that away. He's just sitting in the back seat like flying. Then when she drops that and it makes the pink smoke, she pushes a button, and the piece of wood goes across there to lock him into place. And he can't move his hands. She says, "I'm awfully sorry to leave you, but I must get off." She then puts on the goggles and jumps out of the plane. And you're like, oh shit. Like, that was a badass moment on her part. Forget Bond moves, Bond moments. This is like, she's like doing her makeup, drops a fucking makeup compact, pink smoke, pushes a button, boom, locks him in, opens the side door because it's just a little prop plane, like a little, you know, for two people. And then she just jumps out. She's like, "See ya," and jumps out. It's like, holy shit. So the plane is heading down as she's parachuting to safety. He gets one arm out and karate chops the wood and makes it break and gets loose. He then gets in the pilot seat and barely lands the plane before it explodes. So, like, he's trying to pull it up, and it lands, and it, like, breaks off the landing gear, and then it catches on fire, and then he gets out of it, and it explodes. And so that was pretty cool. Like, so now they didn't kill him. They thought they did. They thought he was dead before. Now they don't know who he is, but they're going to kill him. Now Bond and Tanaka are now talking and looking at the recon photos. They notice that the ship is lighter at times. Then Bond asks if little Nellie showed up. Tanaka says yes, and her father. Bond then walks in and sees Q and calls him father. Then these four men carry these large luggage type things out. They open each one and then start unloading it and putting it together. And then it's like quick edits where it's like everything's all together. And little Nellie comes in like 4 pieces like that. And little Nellie was a man's helicopter and is based on the real-life Wallace Autogyro. Its inventor, Wing Commander K.H. Wallace, actually flew little Nellie in the film. The machine was incorporated into the plot after production designer Ken Adams, he's listening to the radio, and he hears this interview with this guy that has this little one-man helicopter, and he's like, "I need to get a hold of this guy." So he calls him, and he's like, "Hey, you want to be in the movie?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, sure." So they fly it out to Japan, and then they had to do some of the shooting, I think, back in London. But Wallace had to log 85 flights in total to film the sequence. It was all filmed outside of Japan because Japan law forbade the firing of rockets in the air. So they had those fake rocket launch. The thing looked normal, and then Ken Adams put those rocket launchers on it, put some other things on it just to make it look more Bond-like. Bond begins checking out the island. He hasn't found anything, but then 4 helicopters start following him. He uses all of his flamethrowers, missiles, bombs, and heat-seeking missiles. Bond destroys them all. He is ready to head back, but Tanaka tells him to wait where he is because Russia is launching a missile. Maybe they can finally figure out where the base of this whole thing is. And a fact is, it's kind of sad, but kind of nice. So before I tell this story, I always thought like maybe Albert Broccoli and Broccoli and Saltzman, Harry Saltzman and Cubby Broccoli were kind of just guys that were in it for the money, and they didn't care about people maybe. And so this aerial photographer named John Jordan, who was filming that whole helicopter, sequence, when they were filming in Japan, there were certain areas between these mountains where the wind was weird. And so it was hard to fly a helicopter in there. And the guy with the little helicopter, he said he was having a problem. And the guys with the big helicopter, they were having a problem. And what happened was that aerial photographer, John Jordan, lost his foot while working on the film because he had his feet, hanging out on the skids while he's filming. And all of a sudden this helicopter hits them and it chops one of his foot off. And then he just instinctively, he keeps filming, but he pans down to his foot. And then they land and everybody's okay except for his foot. And then they rush him off to the hospital and they have the best doctors and they're able to save his foot. But he's in real bad pain and the foot's not totally matching up. It's not a good thing. And so finally he and Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman are paying for this whole thing. They're like, we don't care. Is he okay? And he's in bed. And then one day he's like, guys, I need to take this foot, have him take the foot off. It's not working. And Albert Broccoli's like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, I'm sure. And they're like, okay. So they cut his foot off. And then he went on to do other films. And the sad thing was, so he did all these films. He, went on until he died while he was making Catch-22. And he was doing some aerial photography, and he fell out of a plane to his death. Could you imagine just free falling? So, but anyway, we got some good footage. If you look at that, it's stellar stuff. Same thing. There's a lot of good film work done in this. There's a guy coming up in the next one, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, filming all the ski stuff. He's really good. There's a guy shooting the train stuff in Octopussy that he got hurt real bad, and but I'll get to that later. But anyway, sorry I keep burping, guys. Very sorry. The Russians launch their missile, and the other flying object shows up and consumes the Russian missile. Then the bad missile turns and re-enters the atmosphere. We see one of the volcanoes open for the missile to land inside. It is a big facility and really cool looking. Like I said, Ken Adams at his best. I sent a picture. I was watching it, that last part, and I sent a picture of Joe Morrell. I was like, look how fucking, it's just this huge, it was bigger than anything. Everybody would just, for lunch, they would just go to watch the building of this set. It was very cool. We see, I almost fell out of my chair. We see several men moving around. We know that it is Spectre. With everyone moving around, suddenly see a man's arm petting a white cat. We know that it's Blofeld. He asks for the missile to be extracted from the other missile. Also, he has the prisoners removed. He says that he will be in his apartment and that they may send for them later, meaning the higher-ups. He tells them, I'll send for you later. He is meeting with some government men from other countries and showing off his piranhas. So this was 1967, and he's got piranhas, in this. He's got this little bridge, goes to his apartment, his office apartment right there. Fucking done great by Ken Adams again. I got pictures of it I'm going to be sharing on Instagram and Facebook. And then he's got this little bridge, and under the bridge is all these piranhas living in this greenish water. And so I'm just I was thinking about it today. I'm like, who would have piranhas in 1967? It's so weird. And he wants $100 million in gold bullion to be put into an account in Buenos Aires. Then men say that, Then men say that the deal was that no money would be paid until war broke out between Russia and the United States. So these higher up guys, these government guys, are like, no, we're not going to pay you money until the war starts between Russia and the United States. And he's like, the fuck? I'm the fucking boss. So Blofeld asks for Osato and number 11. He asks, so then they leave because they want this war to start. So now you know that he's trying to, the Russians are thinking the Americans are stealing their rockets. The Americans are thinking the Russians are stealing theirs. So that's what he's going for. So Blofeld asks Osato and number 11 who the person was in their office. He shows them a X-ray of the gun and asks if they know what gun that is. Osato says, a Walter PPK. Blofeld says, only one man carries that gun, James Bond. They say, no, James Bond is dead. It was in the papers. He says, no. Then he says, let me guess, you let him get away. Osato says, number 11 was supposed to kill him, but she didn't. Blofeld tells them to leave. Osato goes across the bridge, and all is fine. Number 11 crosses the bridge and is dropped into the piranha water. Dun dun, and she is eaten. And then Blofeld tells his men, kill Bond. That should be just a movie. Just kill Bond. That's what it should be called. And then, like, almost like John Wick 3, like everybody's after Bond. Like, that'd be cool. Not as cool as John Wick 3 because Bond doesn't have that kind of, that kind of skills. Fact. Ernest Stavro Blofeld was named after Tom Blofeld, with whom James Bond creator Ian Fleming went to school at Eton. His son is cricket commentator Henry Blofeld. Blofeld's birth date is given in the novel is the same date as Ian Fleming's birthday, which is May 28th, 1908. So that's pretty cool, like that he went to school with this kid, and he was this friend of his, and he's like, I'm going to name this bad guy Blofeld. And that guy now is a commentator named Blofeld. Like, it's just cool. I don't watch cricket, but if I did, then I'd know that. Now we see Bond being brought back to Tanaka's house. They talk about how the Russians are blaming the Americans and that they need to check out those volcanoes. Bond says that we will need some commandos, and Tanaka says that he has ninjas. He says, this is my ninja training school. We see men fighting, using swords, throwing stars, etc. Then he says, now we will see some modern ninjas. We see men shooting, and we see rocket-fired guns and a cigarette that fires like a gun. And here's some funny facts here. Stuntmen from this movie said these ninjas were real and could do all this stuff, but they were afraid of heights. So when they're coming down later on through the volcano from way up high, the ninjas would be like, no, we're not going up there. And my thing is, how do you be a ninja assassin way up high to drop down and kill some people, but maybe it's all groundwork with ninjas. Who knows? So later on, it was all the stuntmen. Whoops, dang, hit my microphone. It was all the stuntmen rappelling down into the crater because none of them would do it. So the stuntmen are like, okay, we'll do it. And also, while scouting for locations in Japan, the chief production team was nearly killed. This part is insane. On March 5th, 1966, producers Robert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, director Louis Gilbert, cinematographer Freddie Young, and production designer Ken Adams were booked to leave Japan on Flight 911, departing Tokyo for Hong Kong and London. 2 hours before their Boeing 707 flight departed, the team were invited to an unexpected ninja demonstration and so missed their plane. Their flight took off as scheduled, and 25 minutes after takeoff, the plane disintegrated over Mount Fuji, killing everybody on board. The incident brought with it an unsettling reality to the meaning of the title, You Only Live Twice. That is crazy. Like, I've never had a situation like that. I'm sure you all know the situation with, although he plays it off, Seth MacFarlane was getting ready to, he was late for his flight, going to get on a plane. It's September 11th, 2001, and he's a little late, and he misses his plane. He's like, God damn. So he goes to the bar, he's having a drink, and all of a sudden, on the news is this plane crashing and into the World Trade Center. And he's like, oh, shit, that was my flight. And so had he not missed his flight, we would not have brought back, we would not have Family Guy. We would not have, Orville, all this stuff. So anyway, stuff like that. But, that's just craziness. If that would have happened, if they would have all died, We would have not had Ken Adams. We would have not had any more Bond films. Maybe they just would have went away. Like, I'd be very upset. What would I be doing now? I'd be doing a podcast about something else. Now James Bond will need to become Japanese, literally, train and get married. This is just crazy. They're like, now you need to become Japanese, which I think is more for the Japanese market, more to like whatever. But it's more like you need to be undercover, so we need to make you look Japanese and get married and da-da-da, when it's like you could have easily, blended in just fine. Now Bond has become Japanese in appearance and is lying with his woman that woman that he has history with. And a man sneaks in above him, lowers a string down, and drips some poison down the string. And Bond rolls over right about then, and his girlfriend rolls right under the string, and the poison lands in her mouth. Bond wakes up to her gasping and shoots a bad guy, but it's too late. His girlfriend is dead. So that was one where you're like, oh, maybe this is going somewhere. He's got this girlfriend and, they have history. And then all of a sudden you're like, holy shit. And that poison down the string, I loved it in Grosse Point Blank. I loved it in here. Like, that's just clever. You never think of like, oh, if I need to secretly kill somebody, it's pretty good. Now Bond is training, and a man gets the best of him, and Bond surrenders. So he's doing that training at like the ninja school or like just doing karate stuff, and Bond surrenders. Then a blade pops out of that guy's bamboo staff that the man is holding, and Bond gets it from him and stabs him with it. They then realize that this is a stranger to their people. Bond says that it's a good thing they're leaving soon. So now you know that they're almost ready. Every time they keep going, oh, maybe a little bit more, a little bit more. Now it's wedding time. And they had told Bond that his woman had a face like a pig, but she doesn't. So I think that was just like a joke, like, oh, she's so ugly, but she wasn't. Now they are riding a boat to the village and are undercover as workers, which looks funny. It's like Bond, like he looked in Red Sun, like he's got or Red Sun Rising, whatever that was called. Anyway, with his bangs down and like, just short little bangs. It just looks funny. And now they're dressed as workers. They got all this stuff, like just dressed like peasants. Bond and his wife are taken to a house to stay. They're getting ready to eat oysters, so they got oysters sitting there on the little table. And he asks where they are going to sleep. She says that he will sleep here and she will sleep over there. Bond says, but we are on our honeymoon. She says, but you used a false name to marry and are here to find the missiles, basically. Then he says, I won't need these then. And he pushes the oysters away because they're aphrodisiacs. And he's like, well, then forget it. So then at night, Tanaka comes and tells him that the Americans are going to launch their missile soon. The countdown has started. So they start looking through the island. She tells Bond about this cave that this woman went in on her boat and came out dead. Bond says, show me where. She takes him there, but he smells gas, so they dive out and swim to safety. Then they hike to the top of the mountain where they suspect they will find something. And an interesting fact here is, after it was discovered that Mihama, playing Kissy Suzuki, couldn't swim, Sean Connery's then wife, actress Diane Calento, doubled for her in her swimming scenes wearing a black wig. They say that she doubled for like mostly all the Japanese women said there was a current or something and they couldn't swim very good. And so she doubled for all of them because she was a really good swimmer. So it was like pretty cool. Bond and her are on this mountain taking a break and they start kissing. They see a helicopter going down into the volcano. They head up to investigate and they can't find the helicopter. They hike down into the volcano. America launches their missile. Now you see America's missile get launched. Bond and her reach the lake at the bottom of the volcano, and Bond takes like a rock and throws it into the lake, but it just bounces across the top because it's made of metal, and it's like, oh, fucking badass. It slides open and slides closed. Suddenly the lake starts opening because a helicopter is leaving. Bond sends her to get Tanaka and bring everyone. Everyone. Bond changes. That's a movie I should do. Bond changes and starts climbing down into the facility. So he changes out of his like regular like peasant outfit into like this gray like turtleneck and pants and stuff. climbing down to the facility. A fact here, I might have said some of this, but this is more in scope, so you can maybe kind of visualize it. Ken Adams' volcano set was constructed at Pinewood Studios outside London and consisted of a movable helicopter platform, a working monorail system, a launch pad, and a full-scale rocket mock-up that could simulate liftoff. 700 tons of structural steel and 200 miles of tubular steel were used. When they were flying around the island scouting locations, Cubby Broccoli saw a volcano and asked Ken Adams if he could design something that would be under the volcano. Ken Adams said that he could. Then later he drew up some plans and showed Cubby. Cubby said, "This is where I said, Cubby, it's kind of cool. It's not for the money, but they do know that they're making money." But Cubby says, "How much do you think it will cost?" Ken Adams says, $1 million. Like, he's just, I think $1 million. He said that Cubby didn't bat an eye. He said, okay. Also later, people were telling Ken Adams that the cinematographer would never be able to light that huge set. So Ken showed him the model, and the guy said, "Yep, I can light it." And he said that, and then later that cinematographer said that he used every light that they had. Like, he was bringing in lights from wherever to light up that whole thing. And if you think about it, that's amazing, because that whole thing, they show that in a long shot. Oh, it's so beautiful. The best set ever of any Bond film. Oh, Bond sneaks onto one of the shuttles, the little monorail thing. Bond finds where the astronauts are being held. Bond tells him to stand back while he blows the lock. He does and goes in. Then he tells them to wait, and when the guards come in, they all beat up the guards. And then Bond says, "Put on their uniforms," and they do. It's pretty cool because it is Bond, a Russian astronaut, and an American astronaut, and they're working together. Now, over the intercom, it says, "Astronauts, get ready. You are needed at the launch," or whatever, needed at the launch pad or whatever it is. Bond is dressed in an astronaut. The other two are still dressed like guards. It's cool because some of the guards and workers are wearing red, some are wearing yellow, and some are wearing white. So it's really cool in that big, giant fucking set. It just looks really cool. There's like spots of color. It's like really neat. Suddenly, as Bond is almost ready to get into the missile, Blofeld says, "Stop that astronaut. Bring him to me." Bond is brought to Blofeld. Blofeld says, "No astronaut would enter the capsule while holding his air conditioner." Blofeld has him take the helmet off. You see Osato recognize him and freak a little. Blofeld says, "James Bond, allow me to introduce myself." Then, sitting in his chair and holding his white Persian cat, there's a guard standing in front of him, and Blofeld slowly leans around the guard and continues. And now we see Blofeld's face for the first time. And it's really fucking like a cool introduction of like, that's kind of what I thought for Spectre when they were like Blofeld. And then you saw him and his face is normal until he gets blown up. But it was like, I kind of wanted that to be like him to be this menacing evil, but he wasn't really that menacing. That's a lot of people's complaint about Spectre, and we'll get to that later, but is that he wasn't that menacing. Anyway, a fact. A number of actors were asked to play both Blofeld before Donald Pleasant, but all has stage or TV commitments, which made them unable to accept the role. Producer Harry Saltzman, so I would say if Harry Saltzman was alive, don't trust him to cast people, because Harry Saltzman, who had an eccentric choice for actors to play villains, had originally hired the fabled Czech actor Jan Werich to play Blofeld. Werich was the personification of sophisticated intellectual humor in Czech theater and film, and was known as the Wise Clown. Casting a clown as a demonic villain backfired during production. It was felt that Werich looked too much like Father Christmas to be menacing, and he was released after a week's shooting. So I'm going to be putting up pictures on Instagram, Facebook of this actor. It kind of sucks because maybe he would have been something, but maybe it would have been like I'm saying with Spectre, like maybe he wouldn't be evil enough. If you guys think that Spectre, that he makes a good Blofeld, Christoph Waltz, that's fine. You're entitled to that opinion. You can call me on that phone number I gave you and say, hey, what the fuck? That phone number is also on my Instagram if you need it. Anyway, Blofeld says, I am, after that cool fucking leaning over and everything and seeing Bond, he says, I am Ernest Stavro Blofeld. They told me you were assassinated in Hong Kong. Bond says, yes, this is my second life. Blofeld then says, you only live twice, Mr. Bond. Blofeld is hoping that after Russia and the U.S. start a war, that there will be a new power, Spectre. And like I said, Donald Pleasance is so great in this role, really great in Halloween. They take Bond out of his astronaut uniform and search his person. They are now launching the missile with replacement astronaut. The counter is counting down at 1.5 minutes to launch. They open the crater. It is launched. We then see that the Russian USSR missile is flying through space. We then see Tanaka and the woman running down the crater, and they stop as they see the missile in the sky. Then Tanaka yells something out, and all these men pop up, all these ninjas. And it's a cool shot. It's like a night shot, and it's all these ninjas on like the crest of the volcano getting ready to run down. And there's like 50 of them. I counted, and there's about 50, maybe a little more. And they're all just, it's all just them lining up the crater, and then they just run down. Like, oh, so cool. Just looks really great. We are back with Bond and Blofeld. Blofeld tells his man, Hans, our job will soon be done. Blow them up as soon as they have captured the Americans. Here's the key for the exploder button. That's what's funny. This is where, like, you see where Austin Powers, got all their stuff from. Like, he doesn't say the detonation, whatever. He just calls it's an exploder button. You push that, things explode. For one, it's funny. For two, it's fucking simplistic. Yeah, if I make a button that blows shit up, I'm going to call it the exploder button. So, the boom boom button. Anyway, he gives the key to Hans. Bond sees it. One of his men tell him that there are people in the crater. Blofeld says, crater guns, fire. The machine guns outside are killing a lot of ninjas. Blofeld tells Bond that his guns are enough to annihilate a small army. He also tells Bond that he can watch it all on TV, and that it may be the last thing he sees. Bond says, if I'm going to be forced to watch television, may I smoke? Blofeld says, yes, give him his cigarettes. It won't be the nicotine that kills you, Mr. Bond. Bond lights a cigarette and holds it, aiming at the main control panel. So again, if you remember what I kind of read through, kind of quick, the ninjas had machine guns, rocket-fired pistols, and cigarettes that fire rockets. The cigarette gun goes off and shoots the guy in the chest that is operating the main control panel. The rocket pistol and cigarette rocket were real-life weapons that were featured after the manufacturer paid for the product placement. It was hoped they would become standard military and intelligence equipment. However, they proved to be too expensive, clumsy, and unreliable, and ceased production a few years later. So that would have been kind of neat. Maybe you can find some, like, cigarette gun. Then Bond starts throwing punches and kicks and flips. He then flips one of the switches that he saw them operate, and it opens a crater. He starts to fight some more people, but they all have guns on him, so he stops. Blofeld tells his men to close the crater. Blofeld walks up to him and says, I shall look forward personally to exterminating you, Mr. Bond. Crater is slowly closing, but about 10 of the ninjas throw ropes down and rappel down. Now the bad guys are shooting at the ninjas. And this was interesting. Vic Armstrong, he's my favorite stuntman that I don't want to spoil, but we'll get to Spy Who Loved Me, Vic Armstrong. And I believe he did View to a Kill from the Eiffel Tower. The stuntman, as first ninja abseiling down the volcano lair, and he was the first one down, but then there was other guys who would rappel down, and they had these things that would stop. It was almost like a water hose that you could grip it and it would slow you down, but the guy didn't grip it enough, and he broke both of his ankles, and it's like, oof, one of the guys, not Vic Armstrong. Blofeld has his men close the shutters. Blofeld says that they are now impregnable, and nothing can stop them as he watches on TV as the Russian missile is flying through space. The ninjas are kicking ass and using samurai swords and grenade launchers, as ninjas do. Use grenade launchers. Silly but cool. According to numerous call sheets, a total of 98 stuntmen were used in the volcano scenes. And it looks it. It's fucking epic and huge. That's what I mean by epic. Not only this big fight at the end, but it going from, Japan is kind of a longer movie, or it feels longer, but it's good. I like it. At least watch it once. There's for those of you who are like, I don't know, it's an old movie. There's a large explosion by Bond and Blofeld. Bond says, impregnable. Blofeld is leaving and having Bond brought along. They're down in Blofeld's office by the piranhas, and Blofeld puts his hand out, and Hans hands him a revolver. He aims it directly at Bond's face, pretty much, and says, "This is a price of failure, Mr. Bond." Then he turns and shoots Asado. Like, that's one where you're like, oh, fuck. Like, Bond can't do anything. He's just standing there. And then Blofeld turns and shoots Asado. Blofeld is leading Bond to one of the shuttles, one of those monorails that are on the track. As Blofeld gets in, he points a gun at Bond, who is still on the platform, so Bond hasn't got in yet. And he says, "Goodbye, Mr. Bond." Then Tanaka throws a throwing star and hits Blofeld in the wrist. That makes him drop the gun after it goes off twice. So he hits the arm and it shoots, and then when he drops it, it goes off again. And then Blofeld takes off. So he just takes off in his little monorail. Bond picks up the gun and runs to Tanaka to tell him that there's an explosion button in the control panel. He says, "We've got to get up there." Tanaka says that they can't because it is too well defended. Right about then, there are some more explosions in the control room, and all the bad guys evacuate except Hans. He has his orders to blow that missile, so he's dedicated. Bond then notices all the technicians leaving down a staircase. He says that there's another way in and asks for Tanaka to cover him while he heads for the staircase. Bond blows up one guy, shoots another one, and then kills the last one with the throwing star to the chest. Bond makes it inside. He is now in Blofeld's office. He sees Hans twirling the key on a keychain. This is pretty cool. I watched this again last night on YouTube. Because I was like, what's the best Bond moment? And that was one where Hans is walking up to him and he's twirling the key, and then he puts it in his pocket. And then Bond, Hans puts a key in his pocket, and they fight all over the office. So they're like tripping over the bed. They're like throwing each other, slamming Bond against a fireplace. Like all this cool stuff. Bond finally gets a key out of Hans' pocket and tries to run away, but Hans catches him on the bridge. They fight, and Bond knocks Hans into the piranha water, and he is eaten. And Bond says, "Bon appetit." Oh, Bond, you rascal. And then another fact here. Actor and stuntman Joe Robinson instructed Sean Connery in the art of judo for the scene where Bond has to fight with Blofeld's giant bodyguard Hans near the end of the film. Robinson also doubled the actor Ronald Rich, who portrayed Hans. He would later appear as diamond smuggler Peter Franks in 1971's Diamonds Are Forever. So that's pretty neat that they use these stuntmen. They're like, these guys are good. Let's give them a speaking part or something. Bond gets to the control room, but can't open the explosion button. So it's kind of cool because he's got the key and everything, but he can't get that little latch to fucking flip open, the little piece of plastic, whatever. Finally, he gets it open. Of course, it's made for tension, of course. Gets it open and pushes the button, which explodes the Spectre missile with 5 seconds to spare before they would have grabbed another missile. And the world is saved. Now we see Blofeld getting off of the shuttle, that little, monorail, opening a fake rock and inserting a key into something. He then pushes a handle down like a big electric switch, this big handle. And the crater headquarters starts to blow up. Like, that's his detonation device to, you have 5 seconds to reach maximum safe distance. 5 minutes. Bond and all the ninjas jump in the water and swim out of that cave where Bond smelled the gas before. Then these rafts get dropped out of planes for everyone. Bond and her are in a raft, and Bond says, "Now how about that honeymoon?" She says, "But they would never let you stay." He says, "But they'll never find us." Suddenly, a submarine rises out of the water directly under their raft. And it would be really cool if they really did that. They had to do it in reverse because it's just not going to work if you try to do that. Like, the raft's going to slide off to one side or the other. So it's really cool but it's done backwards, but still it looks cool because then the sub comes up and they're on their raft on the sub. So it's really cool. And then M is on board and Moneypenny, and it's, same sub as before. And then it says, the end of You Only Live Twice, but James Bond will be back on Her Majesty's Secret Service. And a fact is, Peter R. Hunt was the original editor, and the producers were not happy with the film and pleaded with Hunt to return as editor. He did this on the condition that he could direct the next Bond film on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which he did, and that's very cool. And on Her Majesty's Secret Service, in case you guys didn't know, Bond falls in love. But it's not Sean Connery. It's somebody else. So, it's very interesting. But, it is Bond falling in love with the girl. Sorry, I meant it's George Lazenby. It's not Sean Connery. So, there's that. So, anyway, thanks, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry it was, a little bit long, but it was a long movie. So, and I think it went well. I didn't read too much. It was well laid out. I think everybody enjoyed it because I enjoyed it. So thank you, everyone. And until Phillip and James Bond will be back next. Is that next Wednesday? No. Be back on Monday for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And then now we're going to be going Monday and Friday in February. February and March, it's going to be Monday and Friday and the beginning of April. So it'll be, Phillip and James Bond will be back Monday with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Friday with Diamonds Are Forever with Robert Jones from Vegas. So, all right, everybody, thank you and have a good one. Ba-da, ba-da, ba-da.